when I was listening to him speak, I was like, man, people would call him a coon if they heard him speak like that. People would call him an Uncle Tom if they heard him speak like that. But as I become more knowledgeable, I'll be more receptive to these type of conversations.
And as blacks, we need to ask ourselves why we have become so dependent on this delusion that we live in a society that is intent on keeping us down. That's over with. It isn't that kind of, it's just over with. We need to face ourselves more frankly. You guys, as 75% of all black children born out of wedlock. You understand the kind of dysfunction. Just that statistic alone, that's a problem. And now who's going to fix that? The government? There has to be, right now we have an identity as blacks that's victim focused. We're victims, which basically is designed to tap into white guilt and get them to give us all kinds of little, basically crumbs. And we're just sort of locked into that. And and there's no examination of how self-reliance, more personal responsibility for one's decisions in life, that these are the things that now determine our fate. And again, I blame a lot of this on the original oppression. That was not an experience that taught us these things, these values and principles that other people take for granted.
You know, before I got married, I used to wonder, like, what's the benefits of marriage and this and that? Like, raising a child when you're married is easier because you have two incomes, you have two minds, you have two hands, you have two people that's accessible to the child. You have their family, you have your family. You have more access to that. Now, marriage is beneficial. He said 75% of black children are created out of wedlock. So that means only one individual and the government has to assist you. That's not a successful way to raise a child. Not saying that people can't do it, because I was raised like that. And I overcame. And I'm happy that I am where I am today. But that's not a successful way to do it. Now, we expect the government to fix things. We expect the government to take care of us. That's a form of slavery, to be honest, because you shouldn't expect assistance from the government. You're free now. Now, there's consequences to being freed also, because once you're free, you're responsible for your own well-being. You're responsible for evolving. You're responsible for your elevation. Nobody's going to be there. And then when nobody's there and you're not evolving, you become a victim. And that's sick, dog.
Back to your recent piece in the Wall Street Journal, Shelby. Quote, "Racism is endemic to the human condition, just as stupidity is. We will always have to be on guard against it. But now, in the United States, it is recognized as a scourge. What has happened is that Black America has been confronted with a new problem, the shock of freedom." Close quote. The shock of freedom as a problem. Explain that.
Well, if you have been an oppressed people, and we were obviously truly oppressed for centuries, we learned all sorts of things in order to survive that. I won't go into a long list, but we learned how to reinvent ourselves. We learned how to live with this oppression, with this sort of negative force in your life. We were, I think, miraculous. We created a great music out of this. We did other things that had a worldwide impact. We expanded the idea of democracy and made freedom an absolute. We did all those things. The one thing we never had a chance to do, was to live in freedom. We were never free. We were always in a position of calculating our fate through those who dominated us. We were never just free to invent ourselves as we wanted to. And that the fact that beginning in the 60s, when we began to confront freedom, when America backed up and said, okay, well, discrimination is wrong, here are a bunch of laws to support that, we're confronted. Well, what do you do with freedom? What are you going to do now? And historically, it scared the hell out of us. We would be fantasizing if we denied that. Who wouldn't be? Freedom is a frightening thing. It places such a burden of responsibility on you, on the person who has it. You're now responsible. Your reputation is based now on what you do. Well, combined with that was the fact that 4 centuries of oppression had left us, in many ways, underdeveloped. So when freedom comes, freedom then says, we're not oppressing you anymore. You're responsible for your underdevelopment.
The Trevor Jackson Podcast.
After that was said, only thing I can say to y'all is you got to pick a side. You are responsible for your own development.
The Trevor Jackson Podcast.